Today I've got 10 different EDC utility knives on my desk, and in this video we're going to be taking a quick look at each one and performing a few tests to see which of them work best and have the strongest build quality to help you guys decide which one might be best for you. The knives we've got on my desk today are the Teale Designs Tirant V3, the James brand Palmer, Bob the Box Cutter from Focusworks, Teale Design Tools Utility Folder version 2, the Ronin Energetic Sierra 8 and the Hydra, the Slice EDC Pocket Knife, the Olight Otackle Oknife, the Itokey Multi-Tool Knife, and finally the Olimpia Tools Camo Turbo Knife. And if you want to jump to a particular section in the video, you can find timestamps down below. And if you like the work that I do and want to support the channel, you can use the affiliate purchase links down below. And make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Alright, so we'll kick things off with the Teale Designs Tirant V3. And this is an upgrade from version 1, which you might remember from my last EDC utility knife comparison video. The Tirant has internally skeletonized stone-washed titanium scales, a removable deep carry pocket clip, and you can run either the regular spacer or the pry bar spacer, which gives you some added utility. This has a flipper tab deployment mechanism and cage ceramic ball bearings, and the action is very quick and it locks in place with a frame lock. Overall, the Tirant feels good in the hand, and there's plenty of room for you to slide your thumb up the spine, and the flipper tab doubles as a guard to help give you a good grip and protect your index finger. There's no tool required to change the blade, and all you need to do is press right here with your thumb, pull the blade out, and then you can easily pop in a new blade. And there's just a tiny bit of back and forth movement with the utility blade, and it's definitely one of the easiest when it comes to toolless blade change designs. We're going to do a bit of cardboard cutting with all these knives, and overall the cutting experience is very positive with the Tirant V3, and considering how compact it is, it still gives you the experience of a larger knife. Next up, we've got a utility knife from James brand, and this one is called the Palmer. And James brand is much better known for their pocket knives, but for a first attempt at designing an EDC utility knife, they really did an amazing job. The handle is made from anodized aluminum, and it comes in 6 different colors, and there's also a loop on the end, and it comes with a simple lanyard. They've got a patent pending easy open locking mechanism, and to deploy the blade, you just need to push down on the button and slide the blade forward, and releasing the button will lock the blade in place. It does have a nice and substantial weighty feel to it, but there is a decent amount of back and forth wiggle with the blade. Blade changes are practically effortless on the Palmer, and all you need to do is slide the button to the center, pull the blade out, and insert a new one, and you're all set to go. And this is probably the easiest blade change I've ever done on any utility knife. Cutting cardboard is actually quite smooth and is definitely one of the best in the bunch here, but there isn't a whole lot of room for your thumb to slide up the spine in front of the button. This is Bob the Box Cutter, designed by Focusworks, and this was sent out to me by Urban EDC Supply. The body is machined from aluminum alloy, and it does come in a few different colors, and it is a durable and relatively lightweight design. Bob the Box Cutter has a bolt action style blade deployment mechanism, and it's quite snappy, and it's a very fidget friendly and addictive design, and overall the feel is pretty good considering its small footprint, and there's some nice jimping on the spine, and it has a very thick and substantial feel to it. There's a decent amount of wiggle and back and forth play in the blade, but blade changes don't require a tool, and all you have to do is slide the bolt to about here, press the side of the blade, and then pull the blade out. And when you're ready, you can pop in a new one. Time to make some more cardboard cuts, and you do definitely notice it is a tougher job with the smaller frame knives like this one, but the width is definitely appreciated, and it does deliver a better cutting experience than many of the other smaller knives in the lineup. Next up, we've got the hefty and incredible Utility Folder V2 from Teale Design Tools, which is a small one-man business who manufactures and ships all their products from a garage-based workshop in Virginia. The body of the knife is made from stainless steel, and this one has a really nice hex polish design. And although it's not included, it is also compatible with a few additional accessories, including a pocket clip or thumb studs. You can deploy the blade by pulling back to disengage the lock, and then opening it to lock it in place. It rides on nylon encased stainless steel ball bearings, and it can be opened with one hand and a swift flick of the wrist, just like the Milwaukee Fastback. Overall, it feels incredibly sturdy, and this is definitely going to be a good option for those of you who need a highly capable and durable utility knife, and there's no wiggle in the blade whatsoever, and you get a really large cutting surface area, but you do need a Phillips head screwdriver to unscrew the screws right here in order to change the blade, which is definitely more inconvenient and time consuming compared to the toolless designs, but the upside is the blade is much more secure, safe to work with, and capable for heavy duty use. But it is important to keep this in mind. If you want a very easy and smooth cardboard cutting experience, this blade is by far the best in the lineup, and it does an exceptionally good job at performing this task. This next knife is from Ronin Energetics in collaboration with Delta 2 Alpha, and was just recently funded on Kickstarter, and this is the Sierra 8. It has ergonomically designed G10 handle scales that come in a handful of different colors with a G10 frame, and there's also a removable and reversible pocket clip. This knife offers some of the snappiest and most exciting blade deployment actions that I've seen, and it rides on phosphor bronze washers, and there's a jimp flipper tab, and the blade is secured in both the open and closed position with the use of magnets. The handle is nice and wide, so you can get a nice firm grip on it, but one thing to keep in mind is that it doesn't truly lock in the open position, so you do need to be aware of this so you don't close it on your fingers. It is similar to the Teale Design knife that we looked at previously, and you get a very nice secure blade with no wiggle in any direction, but it also requires an M3 Allen wrench to make blade changes. The Sierra 8 also delivers an exceptional cutting experience and is able to handle the cardboard with ease, and the only thing I noticed here was the knife opening and closing slightly, but as long as you're applying firm downward pressure, this shouldn't be an issue. This is the Hydra, and it's another new knife from Ronin Energetics. The frame is CNC milled carbon fiber and has a G10 plate on one side with a pocket clip and a 3D printed carbon fiber nylon handle on the other side, which is annealed for added strength and rigidity. Deployment is very unique on the Hydra, and it has a magnetic detent, and it can be done with one hand by pressing your thumb, and it will rapidly flip into the open position where it's held in place via a magnetic locking system. But again, it doesn't truly lock in place. The handle is really nice and wide, and it feels a lot more like a full-size knife compared to many of the other options in the lineup. And there's a large open finger ring, which helps you get a really secure grip on the frame. The blade is also extremely secure and held in place by a compression plate, and the way it's currently configured, you will also need an M3 Allen wrench to make blade changes. The Hydra also provides a very positive experience cutting, and I'm enjoying that index finger hole quite a bit. Next up, we've got the EDC pocket knife from Slice, and one thing that I've got to let you know before we dive deeper is that this knife actually takes ceramic carbide blades instead of traditional utility blades, like most of the rest of the knives here, but they are supposed to last longer and they are safer to use, but we will be comparing the blade head to head against the others here in just a few minutes. Anyways, the body is very compact and made from die-cast aluminum, and there's a loop on the end of it where you can attach a lanyard. You can deploy the blade by pressing down and sliding the blade forward, and it will lock in place in the open position. You do need a hex wrench to change the blade, and unfortunately there is still some back and forth wiggle here, but we'll see how it performs before we judge it too harshly. Now we'll do some cutting, and you do definitely notice that it is tougher to get a good grip and comfortably hold smaller knives like this one, and I do feel like I have to apply more downward pressure here to cut through the cardboard, because the ceramic carbide blade doesn't feel quite as sharp as the others, but despite that, it is still able to get the job done, and it should more easily handle basic cutting tasks like tape and other lighter material. This is the Olight Otackle Oknife, and this is the first product I've tested from Olight that's not a flashlight, but overall it seems like a decent design, and I believe this one just comes in blue and it has a stainless steel back. Anyways, the Oknife is very capable despite its size and function as a knife, bottle opener, mini pry bar, slotted screwdriver, and a 6.35mm hex wrench. You can deploy the blade by pressing the spring-loaded slide button down and sliding it forward, and it can be locked in both the half open position and the full open position. There's some jimping on the spine for your thumb, but overall you can get a decent grip on it even though it's a small knife. Blade movement is actually quite minimal compared to many of the other knives here, but you do need to use utility blades with the holes in the center, and this one has 4 holes in the center and will require a flathead to change the blade, which you can do by removing the slotted screw and replacing the blade. Time to cut some more cardboard, and again we've got a more compact design here, but the jimping on the spine is nice, so for a small knife I would say it's doing a pretty excellent job here. This is the K1 multi-tool knife from Itokey, which was one of the most compact and budget-friendly options in the lineup and picked up from Amazon. It's made from stainless steel and has 10 tools built in, including a bottle opener, wrench, Phillips head, a flathead pry bar combo, a bit driver slot, and there's some markings on the side which you can use to take small measurements. There's a small button you press and then you can pull the blade forward and lock it in place, and it does wiggle a bit, but it's not too bad, and overall it is quite small, so it's going to be more difficult to work with than many of the other blades here. But when you consider how pocket carry friendly it is, it might be worthwhile if your primary use for this knife is just going to be opening packages. Cutting cardboard again is going to be more challenging with a smaller blade, and the spine is really thin, and overall it's probably the least comfortable experience, but it is still capable of performing the job that I need it to. The last knife we're going to be taking a look at today is the Olimpia Tools Turbo Knife, and this is the most affordable knife in the lineup and also received great ratings on Amazon. It is one of the larger knives here, but still pocket carry friendly, and this one is camo, but you can pick it up in a few other colors, and it also has a nice large pocket clip. You can deploy the blade by pressing this sideways with your thumb, and then it will lock in place. The ergonomics of this knife are really great, and it does feel very comfortable in the hands, and I'm hoping it stands up well in the testing, but there is a considerable amount of movement in the blade. From the open position, you can change blades by pressing this button, pulling the blade out, and putting a new one in. And that part is very easy. Cutting cardboard is also incredibly easy, and even though it's a very affordable tool, it handles this task really well, and just about as good as many of the other higher end knives here. I ordered these tools based on how well I think they perform in the cardboard cutting task, and it's probably no surprise that in general the larger knives that were easier to grip were better to work with compared to the smaller ones. Before we dive into the rest of the tests, here's a quick look at how these knives stack up in terms of lengths and weights, which is important to keep in mind if you're planning to pocket carry. They are arranged from the tallest to the shortest with their blades retracted, starting on the left, and their weights are all listed in ounces underneath. Alright, so for this test, I drove some staples into a thin piece of plywood using a staple hammer, and we're going to see how well each of these knives can perform the task of removing them. We're going to start with the Olimpia Tools Camo Turbo Knife, and one issue that became apparent immediately was that in my attempt to remove the staples, my thumb kept disengaging the locking mechanism, and performing this task would be much easier with your thumb, and it shouldn't be this easy to disengage it. So in my opinion, this is a design flaw. However, as long as you don't touch the button with your thumb, it is still able to handle the task of removing the staples relatively easily, but as far as I'm concerned, this is a failure because this is an uncomfortable and unnatural position. And also on my last staple, it looks like the tip of the blade actually broke off, so the quality of the blade that comes with the knife is very poor as well. Next up, we've got the Hydra, and I'm actually really enjoying the staple removing experience with this knife, and that index finger hole is ideal for holding the Hydra and working it at an angle. The knife felt very sturdy and didn't flex all that much while removing the staple, and Ronin Energetics does give you a nice high quality blade to start with, so overall I feel like the Hydra performed really well here. The polymer was also able to handle this task relatively good too, and there was minimal flex in the blade, and I wasn't worried about any part of this tool snapping. But one downside again here is that the slider button sits right where I want to put my thumb, so I wouldn't want to perform a task like this too many times without a more comfortable grip design. Despite being a smaller knife, the Oknife actually did a pretty decent job here, and that curved area with jimping actually made the cutting experience quite comfortable, and the blade felt secure and didn't flex too much, so overall I was impressed with this one. Even though the Itokey was also really compact, it did a surprisingly good job here in the test, and although the blade moved back and forth a little bit, I was still able to get under those staples and pop them out with relative ease. Again, the grip was not the most comfortable, and I wouldn't want to have to do this too many times, but it can get the job done in a pinch. The Teale Designs Tools knife gives the best overall experience in staple removal, and there's plenty of room on the spine for you to adjust your fingers, and the handle is nice and long, so it's easy to get plenty of leverage, and the staples really pop right out. The blade felt really secure and hardly flexed at all, and if I had to pick a tool to do this all day long with, it would definitely be this one that I'd recommend. The Sierra 8 also did a pretty good job here with this test, and the folder style blades are definitely better at this job compared to the smaller blades. The blade didn't flex too much, and I wasn't worried about this knife breaking during the process. Bob the box cutter also handled this task surprisingly well, and if I only had the option of using one of the smaller knives, this would definitely be the one that I'd choose. The blade didn't flex too much and definitely doesn't feel flimsy like some of the other smaller tools. The slice knife definitely struggled with this task and is one of the least capable in the lineup at performing this job. I was able to pop out the staples, however I did start to notice the ceramic blade chipping after the first staple, and after a few dozen more removals there'd probably be nothing left of this blade. Finally, we have the Teale Designs knife, and this is another knife that did exceptionally well and would probably be my second choice for this task after the Teale Designs knife. The only thing I noticed was a decent amount of flex in the blade, but it still felt safe to use and popped the staples out with incredible speed. So it was a lot of fun to use, and I did use this one at the end to clean up the board for my next test. Here we have the tools ordered from my favorite to least favorite at performing this task. The Teale Designs, Teale Designs, the Hydra, and the Palmer excelled here. The rest of the tools were usable and could get the job done, but they weren't quite as comfortable as the other ones, with the exception of the slice tool, whose blade would definitely have given out far quicker than the rest. Next, we're going to do the tip bashing test, and basically I'm going to hold each knife in a hammer fist grip and pound the knife into the board directly on the tip of the blade, and I'm going to do so with increased force for a few times to test the strength and reliability of their deployment and locking mechanisms, and see if it causes any failures. First up, we've got the polymer, and after a few bashes, there were no issues, and the closing and opening action is working just like new, so the polymer definitely passes. Next up, we have the Sierra 8, and I was a bit worried that this one might fold after closing it since it only has a magnetic closing mechanism, but after I went for it, I felt much more comfortable ramping up the force, and it performed this task well with no issues. The Olimpia Tools knife did not do well in this test, and I tried it a few times to be sure, but every time I pretty much had the same result, and it does fail after a slight amount of pressure on the tip. However, no permanent damage was done here, and the locking mechanism is still working just fine. The Focus Works knife was able to withstand multiple rounds of tip bashing with no issues, so this one also passes with flying colors. Unfortunately, the Oknife also failed, and again I tried several times to be sure, but every time I pretty much had the same result, and it does fail after a slight amount of pressure on the tip. However, no permanent damage was done, and the locking mechanism does still function. Itokey also was able to withstand multiple rounds of tip bashing with no issues, so this one passes as well. The Slice knife did not pass this test, unfortunately, and after the second tip bashing, we had a catastrophic failure here, and the slide mechanism is no longer functioning. So I opened up the slice, and we can see here that the piece that connects the thumb button to the slider has broken, and unfortunately this knife is done and definitely not able to handle any kind of aggressive tip bashing of any kind. Teale Designs also passed the test and was able to withstand my rounds of tip bashing with ease. Teale Designs had no issues either, and I felt very comfortable giving this tool a good bashing, and overall it performed very well. The last knife in the lineup is the Hydra, which also handled the tip bashing, and there were no problems here either. To summarize, the utility knives on the left all excelled at the tip bashing test and had no issues, and the Olimpia Tools knife did retract repeatedly during this test, but it was not damaged, and the same goes for the Olight Otackle Oknife. However, the Slice EDC pocket knife did fail completely and is no longer functional. Thanks so much for sticking around this long, and it would be great to hear your thoughts on these knives down in the comments below. And last year I performed many of the same tests on 10 other knives, so if you're still searching for that perfect EDC utility knife, check out that video so you can see some more knives. And if there's any other knives you'd like to see included in my next EDC utility knife comparison video, you can leave that down in the comments below as well.